So today we're making a sourdough, and firstly it's late at night because what I tend to do is stick the first mixture on and then just leave it overnight. So what we've got here is I've just got my sourdough starter straight from the fridge. It doesn't need to be brought up to room temperature if you're doing it this way. I've got 375 mils of warm water, and we're just going to mix the warm water and 250 mils, which is basically a cup, American cup of sourdough starter. So I've just poured my sourdough into the bread machine pan, and then just kind of rinse it out with the warm water. Make sure you've got all that starter out. So mix it with the water, and then add that to the pan. So there's the water going in with the residue of the sourdough starter from the other container. So that's your water in your starter, and now I'm just going to add 420 grams of bread flour. So there's my bread flour, just over, that's fine. 420 grams of bread flour. And all you're going to do now is literally just put it in the bread machine. I stick it on the, I've got a pizza setting on this one, so just stick it on the pizza setting, which comes out at 45 minutes. Just get it going. That just starts the whole thing going, and you just need to let it mix for 10 minutes. No more than that, it will just mix for 10 minutes. It should be a fairly runny consistency, so just let that buzz away for about 10 minutes. Okay, so this has been mixing away like that for about 10 minutes. Doesn't need to be exactly 10 minutes, as long as it's all just well mixed. 10 minutes is usually about right. And then just turn your machine off, literally just turn it all off, and then close the lid and leave it in the pan, leave it overnight, and we shall see you in the morning. Good morning. Well, it's now about 8:30. I went to bed at about 11:30, so this has been bubbling away inside the machine, and taking it out to have a look at it, you can see that it's risen right to the top. There is, it's never happened to me, but there is, I suppose, the danger that if it rises so far up, it might just spill over the sides of the pan. Anyway, beautiful bubbly mixture, and ready for the next lot of flour. You'll remember that I put 420 grams of flour in with the water and sourdough starter last night. And so I'm now going to put in the remainder. I've got a total of 720 grams of flour I'm using, so the remainder is 350 grams, and I'm now going to put that into the mixture. Okay, got your flour in, so next just put 2.5 teaspoons of salt into the mixture, and I'm putting 1 tablespoon of sugar, and that's all. So this recipe is literally the starter, the water, the flour, 2.5 teaspoons of salt, and a tablespoon of sugar. I'm going to stick it back in the machine now, and find your pizza setting again, or whatever your quick mix setting is. So there's mine. Again, don't need to go to the whole of the cycle. I'll just explain that as we go along. So stick it on again now. For this particular stage, the flour, once it gets going, tends to kick up and sort of fly all over the place. So what I do, I've got one of these mats that I use, which is one of these Le Creuset mats for hot pans on the thing, but it provides a very useful cover over the pan while it's mixing, and that just prevents it all from kicking up. So I recommend putting whatever you've got that can just cover the top of the pan to stop the flour from flying all over the place. So I'm going to leave that to start mixing. Just while that's doing it, just a quick word of explanation, which is that while that's mixing, if for any reason the quantities of flour and liquid aren't quite right, then it can either be too sloppy, or sometimes the machine may struggle to actually mix it properly, and it'll be straining. So whichever way round it is, chuck a bit more flour in or chuck a bit more water in, whichever way you find it, but normally it's fine. The key to it though is to make sure you've got a really good stiff, sticky dough at the end of this process. I just tend to leave this running for the first part of the pizza settings cycle, which lasts for can't remember, maybe about 20 minutes, and then I just throw it straight out into the next stage, which I'm going to show shortly. It's mixing away nicely now. You'll see that I've taken out the protecting thing at the top, kicked up a bit of flour, so that was worth doing. Going into the machine now. Yeah, it's mixing away quite nicely in there. Most of the flour's been incorporated, still a bit around the edges. It will gradually gather all of that up. It's labouring a tiny bit, but actually I know my machine quite well in this process, and that's actually doing fine, so I'm not going to need to add any more water, and certainly not any more flour. So that's beginning to come together nicely as it should. So we'll look at it again towards the end. Okay, so while we're waiting for the dough to mix, just preparing for the next stage, which is the first rise of the main dough. And so what I do is got a glass jug here. I think this is it's a 2 litre one, I think, by the looks of things. Yeah, just about big enough. It does tend to rise up. I'll talk about that a bit later. But stick a bit of oil in it, and just rub that oil around all the way around the inside of the bowl, just to make sure that the dough isn't sticking. And I've got a lid that I put on as well, so just rub a bit of oil onto there as well, just to so just checking on progress. You can see that's really begun to stiffen up now. It has been labouring a bit, the machine. I'd say it's right on the cusp of needing a bit of water, but I'm actually not going to put any in, because the thing about it is that the stiffer and it is without water, the easier it is to get out of the pan. So I'm happy with that. It's still moving, and it's coming towards the end of its first cycle anyway. Okay, so the machine has stopped. It's been going for about 15 minutes, so it's finished the end of its first knead cycle. So I'm going to pull that out, turn the machine off. You don't need to do that. Doesn't need to go any further. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tip the dough straight into the jug. So I've poured all that into the glass jug. Make sure you get everything out. There's just a little bit of residue there. Just use the sticky spatula to get that out. You don't want to miss out on any of it. And also don't forget to rescue your paddle, because that sometimes comes out and falls into the dough. So you don't want to be cooking your bread later on and finding a huge great piece of metal in it. So this dough is, as you can see, it's quite shiny, it's sticky, it's lovely and sticky. It's a bit too sticky actually, but it's fine. It varies really. That's absolutely fine. If it's looking all sticky and elasticy, perfect, not a problem at all. So all you do now, you've shoved that into your glass thing. I put the lid on top, and then this goes into my cupboard. So I just literally put it inside our larder and on top of the microwave. Seems to be the most convenient place. You can see how far that is up the 2 litre jar. That's going to be coming right up to the top, and actually on many occasions it will actually push the lid off, so got to keep an eye on it. Varies really. You can leave it for quite a long time. Really, minimum of 2 hours is usually the best time. Sometimes it will rise quicker and you can get to it earlier. So we'll come back to it in probably a couple of hours. As an aside, actually, just to say that if you don't want to put the lid on, then what will happen is that the dough will form a kind of dry crust while it's rising, which isn't a problem. Some people like the crust to be dry, ready for when they're going to be cooking it, because it provides even extra crunchiness. I've actually found that to be slightly irritating, and you get enough of a crunch on it anyway, so I tend to cover it, but you can leave it uncovered if you want to have a dry crust. Welcome back, and you can see that this has just been about 2 hours, and you can see that it has well and truly risen. No problem at all with that. So you just need to kind of take the lid off. I oiled the lid, as you know, so it's come off pretty quickly. Just kind of put the dough, kind of make sure it doesn't flop over too much. Just hang on a sec. You've got a nice floured board, and I'm just going to tip the dough out onto the board. Because you've oiled the glass, it should come out very easily. Just drops out eventually, pretty much leaving the whole container largely clear of dough. There it goes. I'll just take a spatula and get the rest of that out. Big lump, and ready just to shape up. I've just thrown it around on the flour and just sort of shaped it up into a sort of almost a kind of rectangular sort of shape. And then what I do is I've got one of these, which I think is called a banneton or something, and just cover it in a bit of flour. Just put a bit of flour on the inside like that. That just prevents it from sticking. And then just put the bread in, throw it around a bit, and that is ready now for its next and final rest. I should say at this point that you can actually at this point divide the dough up into two if you want to. I used to do that, but of late I've just started cooking it in one long one, and then you can either, if you've got, you know, if you want to just slice it in half once it's cooked and put the other half in the freezer, or if you want a lot of bread and you're going to use it fairly quickly, then just use it all in one loaf. So it's entirely a matter for you. Up to my cupboard, just shoving it on top of the microwave. I don't bother covering it. It's coated in flour anyway, and it'll just stick it in there for about an hour. Doesn't need any longer than that, but equally you can leave it in there for a bit longer if you've got other timings that are preventing you from getting back to it. And so yeah, just leave it there, anywhere really that's a non-drafty place, for about an hour. So this has now been rising for just over an hour actually, and as you can see it's a lot bigger now, fuller, and it's ready to go in the oven. I've heated the oven up to 200 degrees on the fan oven setting, so that's really quite hot, and it's going to need to go in the oven for half an hour. Okay, so that's just been poured onto a very, very hot pizza stone, but you can use anything, and in it goes. Okay, here is the time of reckoning. Let's just see what this is looking like after half an hour in the oven. Aha, I think we can safely say that is another triumph. Obviously the video would not be complete without a peek inside the bread, having consumed a couple of slices. Yum. Well, just as a little postscript to that, I mentioned partway through that you can split the dough in two and make two loaves. Here's a good example. I made these just after the loaf I did for the video, and these were made with half white bread flour and half of a malted sort of granary flour, and I split the dough in two and made two smaller loaves. So anyway, just following this, you'll find some music and the scrolling text of the ingredients and the method of what you've just watched, and I hope you found that helpful. Many thanks.